What's going on, family? How y'all doing? Welcome to another installment of Heart of the Matter. My name is Pastor Merrick Deans, and I'm super excited to be with you all. As you know, we meet up every Wednesday at 6:30 to talk about some real life items. And even though it may not seem that we're talking about topics that are verbatim, like it's not like we're saying like, oh, we're talking about children specifically today. Or marriage or whatever. Honestly, some of the topics that we've talked about thus far really, I believe, bleed into every aspect of our life. And so when we talk about covering, when we talk about desires, when we talk about emotions, like all of those different things bleed into every area of our lives. And I believe that God has a lot to say about those things, but we also don't want to just minimize it to just a God conversation because we walk with God as people, as his children. And so it's not just a straight up Bible study about just what God is saying, but also about our perspectives and about the things that we deal with in the midst of those topics so that we could be real with each other, authentic. And I believe that we really have an opportunity to kind of see our starting points and where we can kind of start to plot and plan where we want to be at. And so I'm so glad to be with you today. As you can tell on the screen, today's topic is expansion. And this topic has been one that has been important to me because as somebody who has always served in the church for a long time, I'm a church boy. I've been going to church my whole life. The reality is that I just started to get into the clergy um, over like the past like 8-9 years, if you will, doing ministry, mentorship, and coming up as a minister in training and so forth and so on. And then in the last year, I just started working in full time ministry, and so a good portion of my adult life has been dedicated to things outside of just ministry. Has been dedicated to corporate America and trying to climb corporate ladders, and so that is a huge part of who I am. And so when we talk about expansion, I really think it's important that we start to think about, life outside of church, life outside of just what we do in church, because that's where we spend a lot of our time at. And for those of us who work and those of us who have desires in that area. And so therefore, I thought of none other than the guest that we're about to bring on. My sister, Erika Fenner. And before I bring her on real quick, she's going to come in 2 seconds, but I just kind of want to give a little bit of insight as to why she is so key and so keen in on this. Erika and I have been serving together in different capacities, probably over the last year or two, maybe even longer than that, prior to COVID. And so I've had the opportunity to be able to work with her in church, and both of us were working for free in those capacities. And we both are consultants or were consultants before I switched field. So she worked and supports, and she'll talk more about it at a consulting agency that supports federal contracts, and so did I. And so having somebody who I know is on a career path, has a career path, but then also was serving in church, and then being able to parlay that or try to figure out how she could, create like a side business. And so I just think that expanding her territory and kind of seeing what God wants to do with her and being willing to, try new things, do new things, and get beyond just where she currently was, and always looking for God to kind of like what's next. I think she's perfect for this topic. So without further ado, I want to bring in my ministry partner, my homegirl, my sister, Erika Fenner. Hey, Erika, how are you doing?
Good
Good to see you.
evening. I'm
Yes,
so
yes, yes.
excited to be here.
Awesome. Yeah.
I'm
So,
usually
but
behind the camera, so seeing me
I
on
know.
the screen, I'm
I,
like,
I was gonna say that. I was like, yo. So for those who don't know, Erica is usually behind the camera, working the wheels and grinding the wheels. Doing her whole Wizard of Oz thing behind the curtain, making sure that things go. But I had to bring her to the front of the camera. One, because I know that she does this too. So can you let us know a little bit about? I know you're a podcaster. I know that you do this production thing in the background. So just kind of tell the people a little bit about what you do for a living, and then also what you do outside of just your regular 9 to 5, and kind of give us a little more
yeah,
insight
for a
into
living. Oh my goodness, what don't I do? So I
it. Right.
have been in government contracting since I graduated from college. So I just hit 14 years, 13, 14 years. I was with the Coast Guard, then the EPA. then USDA, then Veterans Affairs, and now I work with Defense Health. So what my role is now is it is an administrative role, which I never thought I'd be in, but essentially I'm a resource manager. So whether it's opening up roles that we need to fill or tracking someone's security clearance, any kind of HR issue that comes up with on the project that I have to coordinate with HR, because people think I'm HR and I'm like, no.
No.
I'm
Don't
HR adjacent. Do not tell me the personal things. Don't.
Right.
I'm going to refer you to the person who can hear the story. But so that's my role now, as I get to touch all the people who are joining our different projects. We just won 2 more. So my life lately, I'm like, what is life? What is, when do I get to sleep? So that's me in the corporate sphere.
So before we get outside of corporate, I want to touch on something. So one, did you stay at the same company that whole time? And then 2, did you intentionally evolve your role? Was that like something you had your sights set on, or is it something that just kind of naturally happened?
So it is a mixture of both. So no, I was not the same company. I came out of college working for a company called SRA International. And then I was like, oh, I want to work for a small company. So I went to another company called Guidant, and we got acquired. And I was like, okay, so there goes that. And that was while I was at the EPA. And then after commuting to DC for a few years, and I'm telling you, I did like carpooling. I did the train. I did the bus. I was like, I'm tired of people falling asleep on my shoulder. I think I'm done. So then I went to work for a company called Agilex, because again, I was like, yes, I want to work for a small company. Everyone says it's so great. And I was there for all of 3 months, and we got acquired by Accenture. And after that, I was like, you know what?
I'm just gonna stay here.
I don't think small companies is for me. I think I'm going to take the hint, God, thank you, and I'll just stay here. And it has been a complete evolution, even in the role that I'm in now. I didn't anticipate being in it. I didn't even know there was such thing as a resource manager. But I had said yes to another role that scared me. And then when that role ended, the person who recruited me to that role was like, oh, I have a work friend who's looking for someone. And I was like, I have no idea what that is, but I need a new project. And I don't really want to be a project manager anymore because I need a break from people. And little did I know at the time that I was going to have more people in this role, but
in a different capacity. Yeah, because you don't have to be client facing is in your current role, which that's definitely like a whole thing, and we could spend literally forever. Yeah, it's like semi babysitting / being somebody's just whatever you need kind of person.
We're like sitting in the room and we're like, I don't think he knows what he's doing. Like 5 minutes later, you're like, he definitely doesn't.
Definitely doesn't know what he's doing. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. And so what I'm hearing is that even and I think this is a good point to point out that sometimes I think when we first get out of college, we think that we are supposed to have this like whole plan, this whole like path. Like first I'm gonna do this. Like we sound like like Louis from Coming to America, like then then I'll be on prize, and then I'll make a year or 2, I'll make assistant manager, and that's when the big bucks start rolling. Like we think the path is so clear, but the reality of it is that like you just said, like sometimes it was frustration that caused you to find something different. It was acquisitions that caused you to find something different. It was somebody tapping you on the shoulder being like, hey, I think you'd be good for this. And so it's like all these external factors that it's just kind of like things that present opportunities that you just have to pray about, like, God, I don't want to do this anymore. Is there something else out there, or somebody presenting you with opportunity? Is that kind of
it is, and it's even trusting God. Like there was perfect example. So when I was still a babe in consulting, I applied to be a road warrior, and you know what that is. But for those watching, it's people who essentially fly to their clients. So typically leave Monday morning, and then you're at the client site until Thursday, Friday. You come home for the weekend, and then you go back. And I just knew that I was going to get this. And I didn't even get a call back after the interview. And I was crushed. Like, I was like, how dare they? And then years later, I mean, like 6-7 years later, I ended up being presented with an opportunity at Accenture where my client was in Phoenix. And what I learned was that had I been a road warrior then, I wouldn't have been able to handle it. I wasn't in a mental space where I would have been able to be on the road and be away from my family. And I wasn't mature enough. And even though I didn't understand it, God knew that I couldn't handle that.
Wow, that's good.
So, even just trusting God and his timing to the point where now it was still hard when I was in my 30s doing it. I turned 30 and on the road. But it was a different kind of hard. Like it was this work is so much harder than I thought it would be. And not like I'm lonely, I'm depressed. Like it was, I mentally could handle it because of everything that I'd been through the past 5-6 years. And I knew how to be on a client site, and I knew how to not to hear, but not really hear the conversations going on, and to not be the conversations going on around you. So God's timing was perfect because, like I said, if I had done it then, I wouldn't have been the consultant I am today if I had taken that job prematurely.
Yo, you just said something that like pricked something that I want to touch on. And me and you kind of talked about this before this, and you actually brought up this verse. You were talking about Jabez's prayer to God for expansion, and it was fits so nicely into our topic. And so I went and pulled it. Just for the reason, because we do like to throw Bible in here. It's not just it's a little Bible study, and I promise I'm gonna bring this full circle, but I just want to bring this up. So it says in 1 Chronicles chapter 4 verse 10, Jabez called on the God of Israel, saying, "Oh, that you would bless me and enlarge my territory." But this is the part that stuck out to me and kind of fits in with what you just said. And I think you can expound on it a little bit, and that your hand might be with me, and that you would keep me from hurt and harm. And the only way that somebody can add that second part, so we know everybody wants expansion and everybody wants to be their territory to be made bigger. But the only way that we can add that second part, and that your hand will be on me, is if you're mature enough to know that you can't take on the expansion without God's hand being on you, right? And when you were just talking about your maturity in the midst of your expanded role, I heard Darius Daniels one time say that God grounds you deeper before he takes you higher, right? So anytime before God goes higher, he goes deeper first. He, for grounding. What was your grounding like? I know you just said some of it professionally, but was there some like personal stuff that God was working on you, or spiritual stuff that God was working
on? When I was interviewing for that job, I was a super babe in Christ, right? Like I've been to church my whole life. Like in college, I was like, I believe in God, but I think I'm going to sleep in after last night. So
absolutely.
I loved it, right? I love you, God, but it was more out of like when it's convenient for me. Whereas after college, I did a missions trip to Nicaragua. And on that mission trip, it was about a year or two after I graduated college. God really pricked my heart. He really planted a seed for me to know how blessed I am and how important it is, and what it means when we're told your gift will make room for you or make way for you. So in that, had I gone, then I didn't know how to study. I didn't know how to pray. Really. I didn't know how to like be grounded and be able to say, I'm not for that. I'm not going to go to that. Where years later, because I had been teaching, and when you teach, you learn. So I was like, I can't have these teenagers asking me questions, and I'm sitting here like, I don't know. So like those years, I learned how to lean on God deeply. I learned how to really read his word and research his word, and how his word just became personal for me. So another, not only maturity wise, but just maturity in faith, I wasn't ready to be able to be on the road like that. Whereas when I was in Phoenix, it was hard. Like there were nights when I wasn't really sleeping. My mom will tell you that I would like call her crying, but those nights were the nights when I was like praying fervently, like, God, I know I'm here because you have placed me here. I know it hurts. I know I'm scared. I know these things are tough, but I know that I'm here for a reason and a season. I know this isn't forever. You've made it clear. But had I gone before and experienced that, I wouldn't have been able to sit in my hotel room by myself and speak to God. I would have just sat there depressed trying to figure out how to get off the project.
Wow. That's good. No, because I think that, one, you said something, and I promise we're gonna get to the other stuff, but you just like keep pricking stuff. You said that you contacted your mom, and I think that sometimes we forget that God like places people in our lives to like help us through our expansion season, right? Because like I think people, when they think about expansion, and just naturally, just all of us as humans, naturally when we think about expansion, we often think about it as like more good stuff, right? So more money, more followers, more resources at our disposal, and it all sounds gravy. But the reality is, I think a lot of expansion is almost like when your stomach gets expanded after you eat, and there's a lot of like uncomfortability that comes with expansion, right? And God places these people in our lives. It could just be like your parent, it could be a friend, it could be a mentor or whatever. But a lot of times we only think about expansion, especially Christians, as like a us and God thing. As opposed to like, nah, like I need to bring like God is like calling me somewhere, but he's also providing me with the support system and influences and all these different things. And that's really, as we've been in this like on one series. That's really what I'm trying to do, is like get people to not just look up, but also look around them. And it sounds like your mom was like really influential in that process.
Oh man,
probably in general. Yeah.
Let me tell you, my first week there, I think I'd been there for 2 days, and I was like, "This ain't it." So
right.
I get to the hotel, and my mom, she's watch this eventually. She's gonna laugh. So I call my parents, and they're on speakerphone, and I'm like crying. I'm like, I think I made a mistake. My dad's like, "Just come home. Just come home."
Right. It just sounds like me.
Yeah,
my daughter's in distress. Come on, cancel it all. Trip over.
I will book your flight. He was like, tell them you can't do it. Just come home. Right. My mom takes off the speakerphone and goes, "You are stronger than this job. You are going to stay there. Right. You are going to learn. You're going to grow, and we'll be at the airport to pick you up on Thursday." That's just who she is, right? Like my dad was like, she can't. I know. And my mom was like, please, like, right. I have built you up for such a time as this. Like, absolutely, this is not going to break you. You're going to learn what you need to learn. And, you can cry, you can be upset, but what you're not going to do is leave early, and we'll see you on Thursday.
That's good. That's so good. Yeah. And I think we need that kick in the pants sometimes. Yeah. Because we're praying for stuff that it's like, okay, but you got to go through something to get it. Like, your prayer life was probably like, like, God, I'm ready for something different. I'm ready for something more. And it's like, well, different comes with discomfort. And and just being able to get through that. And so that fast forwards us to you serving at church and even being expanded once again, like and I know for sure, just having been in church for a long time, I'm sure when you say yes to something in church, especially a growing church or a church that doesn't have it all figured out yet, which I don't know if there is one that does, but a lot of times you get less instruction and you get more problems. It's more like, hey, this is the problem that we have, as opposed to this is how you go ahead and do it, right? And so talk to me about that, because I think you went from, now you're a consultant, you probably got that solidly under your feet, you're going to work, probably just doing your job regularly, but now you're like operating cameras and doing, live stream and working audio boards and just like all of these things that probably were so foreign to you before that role.
Goodness. So I got started in ministry, it's all a snowball. It's the best snowball, but it's all a snowball. So I got started because at the church I was at the time, there was the leader of the children's ministry, and she's on stage saying how they need volunteers. Right. And I'm like, I think I could teach Sunday school. Like, I think I could do it. So of course I signed up.
I went to Guatemala. I could go. I could do this.
I can do this. So I sign up and I teach like the kindergarten and pre-K. And I was like, what did I get myself into?
Right.
But, I grew so much, and I loved it. I absolutely loved teaching them. I loved spending the time with them. And then a few years later, the youth minister stands on stage and says, we need people to work with our teenagers. And again, somehow, some way, I said yes.
Right.
And in that because I was like, they can always find volunteers for children's ministry. because kids aren't scary. Well, they kind of are, but like to them, it's like, okay, we can find parents to do it, but teenagers get the short end of the stick sometimes.
They do. Yeah.
They grew me, and
nobody got no time for attitudes and stuff
exactly,
like that.
exactly. And working in youth ministry with middle schoolers and high schoolers, that's when like my faith took deep roots. Because like I said, I was like, I have to study for myself. I have to be able to pray for them when they come to me. I cannot be in here fronting in a fraud. Like I have to grow because I want them to grow. And if I don't have water in my cup to water them, then what am I doing here?
Wow, that's good.
So I did youth ministry for a while, and then I passed it on to a friend who then became the youth lead. And again, I said yes to the technology team, and then the person who was over the team left the church or stepped down from the ministry to just take a break. And somehow, some way, I became the de facto lead of that. And it was really just the yes. And I think that's like what's
that's good.
Big when it comes to expansion, is that the most important word I've ever uttered in expanding my life, whether it be work, whether it be my faith, whether it be friendships, relationships, what have you, is yes, even when it scared me. And sometimes the best yes was the one that terrified me. When I accepted the job in Phoenix, I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. They have scorpions there. This is kind of crazy. But that yes catapulted my career. It did more for my career in 9 months than it did than it would have happened in years. And saying yes to technology and youth ministry and children's ministry did so much for my faith. So that yes is so important. It's so critical to be able to expand and to enlarge. And even now, post serving technology, I said yes to a friend who asked me to help with the Zoom during the pandemic for our church. And then because of that church asked if I could help every Sunday. And I said yes. And I never thought I would get paid to work in technology. I actually struggled with it. But, it's just really been one yes after another yes, after another yes. And God's like, just trust me. Like, do you trust me? Can you give me your yes? If you give me your yes, I'm going to show you how much I can do with it.
That's good. And I want to pull something out of what you said, and you could disagree or, correct me if I'm wrong. But what I'm hearing though, is that you kept saying that like every time an opportunity came, you were responding to something like on the inside of you. Right. And so it sounds like you weren't just saying yes to the person out of like pressure or obligation or just trying to be nice, but you felt like you were saying yes to God in those moments. Like there was something that was like tugging on the inside of you, that, you were saying yes to God and feeling like he was calling you. And I love that idea, because I think that we always, when we start to think about our calling with God or God expanding us, we always think about it as God giving us something so that we can do more of what we want to do. But I just feel like expansion always comes with us giving God something of ours so that he can do more with it than what we thought we could do. And so it's like, it's not like you were this amazing teacher and God, and it's like, oh, the church just needs all your teaching skills. It was like, no, God, I'm going to give you my feeble teaching skills, and then God develops it in that process. You know what I mean? It's like, hey God, I'll give you, I don't know what what a 1/4 inch cord input looks like, but I'll just go back here and tinker around. And it's like, and then you look back a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, and it's like, dang, like I grew so much. And growth is like, it's almost like watching grass grow. Like you don't sit there and just watch it, but you just come back like 2 weeks later and you're like, dang, the grass is long. Like I need to cut it, or my nails are long. I need to cut them, or my hair is getting long. And we don't see the growth. We don't see the expansion. It's like this slow thing, but we just have to be faithful in that role. And I love it that you said that you were there to serve, and then you got an opportunity to get paid for what you were doing. And this is one thing I want to call out, and you can finish out the today's chat kind of like just honing in on this. But I wrote about this even in the book that I wrote called Poor. It's about service, and the reality of it is that you can get, like, we get this mixed up in church all the time. Like, it's okay to get paid for your service. The idea is that payment is not the motivating factor, right? It's not the intent. Like, I'm not doing this so I get paid. I'm getting paid to do this because one, I've developed a skill. Two, there's an overflow or opportunity. Somebody has resources to be able to acquire this skill set, and that God could be using this as a way for me to be able to be sustained while I serve his people. Because I don't believe that God wants us out here like trying to struggle in service. It's like, I'm going to cause provision. So some people, they get their provision from their 9 to 5, and then they use their free time to be able to serve. Other people can get provision from their service. But as long as we have a heart for the people that we're serving, as opposed to just the money, then I think that's where we kind of, gets off a little bit. And then at the end of Jabez's prayer, it says here that in the last part, and God granted what he asked. And so I think that it sounds like you're walking in what you've been praying about, and it just probably feels a little funny, a lot new. It's hard to be like, hey, can you send people invoices to churches, and you've been serving in church all along. So just talk to me about that process. I know we don't have a lot of time, but I really want to hear about that. It's okay if we go over a little bit, and just kind of how you reconcile or learning to reconcile with that in your service to God.
A friend told me a while ago, there is nothing wrong, and my mom will reiterate it, with being my mom is like, one day when we have her on here,
I know we definitely bring in Mama Cheryl.
We'll have the girls. It'll be really something.
We're gonna have to set aside an hour and a half for that one, because like they are not gonna stop after half an hour. Like,
right. But I really had to work through feeling guilty about being paid, because I was like, this is how I serve. God has given me this gift and this opportunity. Like, how can I accept money for it? And what multiple people, including my mom, said was, you are not doing this for the money, like you said, but your time is valuable. You have a skill set. You have worked very hard to cultivate it. You've worked very hard to learn these skills and to be able to work effectively with people. And there's nothing wrong with being compensated. And she was like, and honestly, you can do it for free. That's fine. But if they're willing to pay you for it, if they're willing to show that they value it, don't let people block that blessing, or don't block other people's blessing.
Right.
And there are times when I'm like, nope, I can't. We're the Girl Scouts. Like, you're helping these really great young women. I can't take it. And then there are times where I'm like, okay, like, this is my price. And I already know I undercharge. So even now in the pandemic, developing StreamYard skills and iMovie and being able to pull things together, it's still hard for me to invoice and to, in a sense, be compensated for what I'm providing, because I'm like, what if this isn't what he wants? But it is, my gift has made way for me. It's made room for me to be in these spaces, to have these opportunities, to be able to provide this service. Because really, at the end of the day, my goal is never going to be to make money. It's always, I love worship, and I love worship experience, and I love witnessing someone connect with God in that space. So whether it be virtually or in service, where we're making sure everything on the screen is okay, that the lighting is okay, I really, ultimately, my goal, what makes my heart so happy, is to see people in a place of worship, because chains break when we worship, things change when we worship, scales fall off of eyes in that space. There are things that people come in so heavy with. And when we worship, when we lift it to God, it doesn't immediately change that situation, but it changes how we perceive it. It changes how we feel about it. So it's never been about compensation, getting ahead, having more clients than this person. It's always been about me being a part of someone's experience with God. And I think there's nothing more satisfying for me than knowing that I am a part of someone who came in heavy and is maybe leaving a little lighter.
Right, right. No, that's the why. That's the passion. That's the push behind it. But I think one thing that we have to reconcile with is that God is always going to create provision for people to be
Yeah.
in places that He's called them to, and it may not that provision may not come from that place. But he's always going to create provision. He's always going to send a raven with meat in his mouth. He's always going to have, the woman make the last cake before the miracle happens. Like he's always going to have like the baskets left over after the disciples pick up from the fish and 5 loaves and they ate from that. Like he's always going to create provision. And he even set it up in the law with the Levites. He was like, listen, y'all, give a portion. That's where the tithe came from, because I have these people who are directly doing my will, doing what I've commanded them to do, what I've called them to do, and they need provision from the blessings that I've given you. And so for churches or for anybody to pay somebody for what they do, it's not a bad thing at all. It honestly allows the person to be able to not have to halfway serve or to try to eat somewhere else and then come serve here when the need is great here, for all the reasons that you mentioned, as far as like people's lives being changed. I just think that we just have to have discernment on where God wants us, right? Because some people will go follow the money, and it's not a bad thing they're getting paid, but God might be calling them to do something else and be somewhere else. They're responding specifically to the money, or God could be the place could be devaluing what you bring because they're not paying for it. In the sense of and we've been in this before. I know both you and I, maybe not the same place, but I'm just knowing you, where it's some people only value what they are invested in. And if you're not fully invested in something, in someone, then you tend to overlook what God has provided you. And so sometimes when we have to sacrifice for somebody by paying them, or when they are a part of our budget, or when they are part of, whatever, even if it's not money, even if it's time, energy, effort, pouring into people allows you to value the people you're pouring into, because it's taking something from you. And when you don't do that, a lot of times people will overlook you, or they will, kind of whatever. And so that's why I think that God calls us to take care of each other when we operate in that way. And so final word, you can, definitely have it. I just want you to touch on when we talk about expansion, just let us know, like, and you may not know what's next, but what if you could get a peek into your prayer life, what are some of the next expansion, or it may not be like a place or a move, but just where do you see God growing you in this next season of your life, or where you see expansion happening for you personally?
Yeah. So for me personally, and this is like,
or it could be professionally too, whatever.
Oh, I'm like, I'm just here so I can pay my bills and go on a trip now.
Right, trying to get through this recession they talking about.
But in my faith walk, it's honestly where I feel God is growing me now, is being more comfortable with conversations like this, right? Like I am very much behind the scenes. I can put everything up on the screen. I can create all the videos, but it's this past, I'll say, year and a half, God has really been like, okay, well, now I want you to feel more comfortable sharing your testimony, to feel more comfortable sharing what you've experienced. And because even in doing that, like I'm growing, like even in this conversation tonight, I'm growing, speaking with you. So in this season, it's me trying to accept and give God my yes when people ask me to be on this side of the camera. Is, when you sent me that text earlier, I was like, oh boy. Okay.
Right.
Like this is, if God placed it on your heart to ask me,
absolutely.
Then yes, because I know that He's working to try and get me to be comfortable to to share and not to just be a part of other people's experiences.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's definitely what happened. And God was like, yo, that's the person you need to talk to. And for this very reason, because I think you are where a lot of people are in this time where things are going good. It's easy to know what to pray about when things are like super tough or it's out of your control. It's like, oh, my health is dwindling, or something is constricted. But when you're in a season of newness and growth and what's next and da 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 da, or you start to feel like your time is being constricted. Now it's like, okay, now I have to be real selective about this next phase in my life, right? And so I think a lot of people are there. And so I just know that you blessed some people through your testimony tonight, through the advice that you gave. So let's run it one time and then we can go ahead and close out. The major key, as DJ Khaled said, the major key for today is giving God your yes, and that leads to your expansion and being willing to deal with the discomfort of the yes that comes, because it's going to be discomfort right after the yes. Like in every instance that you just said, like you were like, nah, it was something that didn't feel good. But
it did not feel good.
Right.
And and I'm gonna give a footnote on that.
Right.
Because this is also what I'm working on in this season, is not feeling bad using discernment to give my no.
Woo.
Like we become, I am very much like, if you need me, I got you. You need me to babysit, you need me to watch a dog, like whatever you need, I'm gonna make it work. And in this season, I'm realizing that there are some things I'm becoming so distracted with. And even though, people's intention isn't to distract me, it's because I'm available, I'm dependable.
Right.
So me learning to not feel bad saying, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Like I really want to, know that I really want to. But if I say yes to you, then I'm going to have to say no to myself. And if I say no to myself, I'm going to be operating in frustration. If I'm operating in frustration, I can't be impactful. So just, the yes is so important, but also just learning to not feel guilty when you have to say no. And I'm a people pleaser. I am the textbook people pleaser. So God is working on me to be like, Erika, you can't do it. Like, I know you want to. I know you want to go on that trip. I know you want to help. I know you want to do this and make this work. And sometimes I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't.
Yeah, because you don't serve people, you serve God. So yeah, definitely. And people are fickle. So like that, I agree with you. So yeah, I love that. You said,
and people are like all nice and perky, and you're over here exhausted because you couldn't say no.
Exactly. So we adding that as a major key. Trust your discernment when to say no. Man, Erika, thank you so much for today. This truly blessed me, and I know it touched some people. And people want to connect with you. I got your IG up, so definitely reach out to Erika. And I'm excited about what's next for you in this season. And we'll be praying for you. So that's another episode. I'm so glad that we got a chance to talk about expansion. Again, as always, if you all have any ideas about what we should talk about, what you if there's anything on your heart to do for us to kind of dive into, let us know. I'm excited about some of the conversation topics we have coming up. And Erika will be back in front of the camera, but she's always behind the camera. And so thank you so much for everything that you do. I love and appreciate you. So thank you so much.
I love you too. Thank you, Pastor Merrick. Thank you, everyone. I'm so excited for what God has for Heart Church, and I'm just excited to be a part of it.
Dope. Well, until next week, we love you guys. See you soon, and definitely keep God first. Peace.